At the time, as a 19, 20-year-old, I was trying to figure out who could I look to do this thing that God had asked me to do. And I did not see women in my immediate environment who were teaching or preaching the word like I wanted to. I mean, we had conferences, but every conference talked about Proverbs 31. I was like, how long are we going to talk about this one passage? How many tote bags do we need? Why is everybody wearing pink and lavender? I don't even like flowers. At the time, wasn't even sure I liked children. I couldn't play the piano. I didn't know what. I was like, I'm not sweet. I'm not quiet. I'm not nurtured. God, this is not going to work out. I don't see anybody who looks like me. And you might be there right now. God may be asking you to do something, and you're saying, but somebody else already does that better than me, God. But what am I going to do? I don't see anybody that looks like me. He is giving you a path, not changing your personality. He's saying, I want you to go hard for me the way you went hard against me. When the way you went hard for yourself, go that way for me. So you don't have to suddenly become talkative and loud if you're quiet and introverted. You don't have to suddenly become a thinker and a processor if you know that you're a quick decision maker. Have you ever seen really assertive people with strong personality types try to be sweet? Oh, it's painful. Like when they say, I'm sorry. You're like, that looked like that hurt. You know what I'm saying? Or like I'm the person that you're going to get a text from, usually with, hey, can you do this, and have you done this? And then about 10 minutes later, I'll be like, oh, good morning. Because the salutation is not what comes to mind first, right? But I'm building a relationship and I'm trusting that what God's called me to do, he's going to make room for. And so I'm saying you need to know that God has called you. He's changing your path, not your personality. He don't need to remake who you are, because that would mean he made you wrong in the first place. He does not need to remake you. He's just redeeming you. So take all of who you were and do that for Jesus, and then you'll know you're on the right path. Because if you're trying to be somebody else's version of Christianity, it's a sad thing. And it's not what God's called you to do. I don't care if he's called you to do something that 1 million other people are doing. They don't have your story. They don't have your personality. They don't have your experiences. They don't have your gifts. They don't have your skills. They don't have your talent. They don't have your relationship with God. He says, I need everybody doing all the things I've called them to. So you've got to believe that the path is greater than whatever might be hindering you in your personality. Your passion does not validate God's purpose. Y'all say, not validate. And I'm saying this is important because we're in a culture, and if we don't feel it, it must not be right. If I don't feel good about it, then I must need to leave. If these people are not passionate for me, then I need to cut them out. If I'm not passionate for the thing anymore, maybe this isn't what God has called me to do. But let me tell you a couple things. Number one, you can be passionately wrong. Listen, Paul was serious about persecuting the church. I mean, he was staying up late, working long hours, trying to get letters, going to Damascus, trying to talk to high priests, imprisoning men and women, which, by the way, at that time, imprisoning women was just, even for Paul, my God. But he went all out for it, but he was wrong. So you can be excited about something and it be absolutely against what God has called you to do. And so just because you feel good about it, that doesn't validate that that's what God's called you to do. On the flip side, when you no longer feel good about it, that does not mean God is calling you to quit. Listen, marriage is not going to feel like the first date for 20 years. People celebrate anniversaries because they went through some hard times and now they remember, oh my gosh, I actually didn't kill you this year. Look at what the Lord has done. You got to understand that anything you're doing for a long period of time is going to have the ebbs and flows of passion. It's not going to be exciting every single time. Because your emotions, while they're important, they are not the primary driver. So you can't go around quitting stuff because it don't move you anymore. God is like, but are you moving my agenda forward? I don't really care how you feel at any given moment. And if it's what God's called you to do, you find your passion. Because you know there's no other reason he's left you here on earth. You can be passionate and still against what God has called you to do. Your passion does not validate God's purpose. And I say this, y'all, because when I talk to people and they're trying to figure out what God has for them, they're like, well, I just feel, the Lord is telling me. Is it? Did he tell you about that sin last week, or he just telling you about this new opportunity? Did he tell you to apologize for your attitude, or he just told you about to get a promotion? Does he tell you all the things, or does God only tell you things that feel good to you? Because if he's only telling you things that feel good, I would argue that might not be God. That might be your own spirit disguising as God. Because God tells me things that are good for me, not necessarily things that feel good to me. And when I obey, it's on the other side of obedience that I say, God, that was good. If it gets me all excited on day one, it's probably something that I created myself. Because let me tell you something, God is not calling you to the things that make you feel good. God is calling you to the things that are good and for his goal for your life. God's purpose does not erase your past. Y'all grew up in church, and I remember when people would get up and give their testimony, and it was all BC, before Christ. And then I was sitting there like, okay, this is real cool. But what about your testimony DC? That's during Christ, and you still acted crazy. Anybody have a DC testimony? Y'all know. Oh, it's more than 3 of y'all. Who has a DC, RNC, right now in Christ? I know I'm acting crazy. And I wish I could get up here and be like, I once was blind, but now I see. I'm like, no, I was blind. Now I'm blind with Jesus, and I'm stumbling along. And every now and then I see a little bit. I wish it was this night and day thing, but here's the thing. God's purpose doesn't erase your past. Look, Acts chapter 9:21, it says, all who heard Paul, were amazed and said, is not this the man who made havoc in Jerusalem of those who called upon his name? Has he not come here for the purpose to bring them bound before the chief priest? Wait a minute, wasn't Paul on the way to imprison these people? Is that the same Paul? Little P? Okay, let me see. Verse 22, 23. But Saul increased all the more in strength and confounded the Jews who lived in Damascus by proving that Jesus was the Christ. Now, after days had passed, the Jews plotted to kill him. You need to understand that God is not going to erase your past to call you into purpose. As a matter of fact, you will often come face to face with that past, and you better be able to say, yes, that was me, but this is me too. And I understand, listen, that sometimes I do things that I say I don't believe in, but that's because I'm in a struggle. See, if we would let the world know that we're human and we struggle, they won't cancel church when you act like you. The reason why people are like, I'm through with God, I'm through with the church, y'all are all hypocrites. Yes, we're hypocrites because we believe a lot of things that we haven't mastered yet. But if I let you know that I'm on this journey, I'm in this struggle, will you work with me? I'm not going to preach at you like you should be perfect. Don't expect me to be perfect. I'm the same mess, but now I'm a mess plus Jesus, okay? And we are working through this thing. And you have to be okay with that, because that is how God is glorified in your life. Not that you wake up and some people act like they got born when they met Jesus. No, you had a life before Jesus. And if you act like you don't, he's going to bring people in your life that say, I remember you. Oh, you've been somewhere. You've been in your new life and ran into somebody at the mall, at the restaurant. You're like, And then your new friend's like, who is that? I don't know. And you just sitting there trying to give them the signal, like, do not come over here. These my new friends, they don't know nothing about you. They don't know nothing about this life that you represent, right? They didn't even know you used to live in that city. Because we get so consumed with erasing that. But Paul is saying, no. I know what you think, Jews. And instead of shutting down, instead of feeling like I have to post and explain myself to you, well, here's why some of these, no. He said he grew in more strength, confounding them. He said, you can be confused because you know what? It's a little confusing to think that Christ would take a sinner like me and give me his Holy Spirit and then give me a calling and a mission and allow me to represent him. I can understand your confusion, but it will not derail me from what I'm trying to do. That's what it means to understand that my past is very much a part of this thing called purpose. God is not going to erase it. And let me tell you, sometimes it's going to be your own family. It's going to be your friends. And they're like, you don't act like you used to. Oh, now you too good because you remember that time. I remember that time. That was me too, but this is me now. So you don't have to shut them down, because sometimes it's your spouse. They don't want you to be great in God. They want you to be the person they marry because that's what's comfortable for them. You got to say, I know this is going to make you uncomfortable. I know it's going to be confusing for you, but I got to grow in what God is asking me to do. And I'm going to make some mistakes, but guess what? Miracles come out of mistakes. And it may not always make sense, but I'm not going to deny who I was. I know who I was. And as a matter of fact, the more comfortable I am with who I was, the more glory God receives for who I am today.